Well, hello, colleagues at Tacoma Park WRLC. This is Joe Couch, current English 102 coordinator just across the street in Tacoma Park. Just here through this magical method of electronic recording to walk us through a couple of handouts prepared by Tacoma Park WRLC's own Ellen Aris to talk about some key skills in English 102 that really make the gap between that course's outcomes and 101, 101 Plus's outcomes really pronounced. When students come into the WRLC and they're looking for content-based assistance, tutoring, having a good, solid handle. This means the student, of course, on these sorts of ideas will really be helpful on the things that the course really looks for, as in argumentation, rhetoric. This first handout, types of claims, walks through the 5 main claim types. The idea being, it's one thing as a reader or writer to identify this is the writer's point or to make a point, but to understand the rhetoric, the logic, the argumentation of a type of claim or argument and how those claims then work together, whether it's reading it, writing it, then researching it to do more writing, really makes the foundation of the course, especially since it is named Critical Reading, Writing, and Research, right? So let's talk about these a little bit. So they can all be disputed, but the key is, in terms of argued, debated, but the key is how, what is being argued here? The claim types help identify that. And in the handout, you have the name of the type with the little flow chart arrow with this essential definition, how they are often used and supported, some examples, and then a handy box on each side. Tell us to explain how we might see them in terms of what could support them, what they are trying to support in an overall argument. So let's walk through them a bit. Claims of fact. Does it exist, right? Factual, objective evidence, the existence of a condition. That's really the deal. Does it exist? And in a number of debates, there might not be a lot of debate on this claim type, but sometimes there very much is. I'm sure we're all familiar with the term alternative facts. That is the rhetorical strategy behind that, not just to irritate people, trying to say it doesn't exist. So the key is, what is the base fact of existence? What is it? What is happening? So that's the deal. And almost all arguments have this to some level, right? Establishing the issue, establishing the controversy, or even just laying the groundwork of what is out there in relation to the debate. Value sounds like evaluate. It can be right, wrong, just, unjust. Also, valuable. Can also keep in mind we have a lot of different types of value. Moral value, but also financial value, family value, social value, economic value, environmental value, etc. So that does sound personal, and hence emotional language can get involved with claims of value. Very true. As can a subjective, I hate to use the word opinion, but yeah, sometimes a subjective view, let's call it that. The idea of evaluation. You can't really support it with statistics. Sometimes you can, but usually, yeah, that's right. They're used through other means. Explaining morals, cause effect, etc. Usually will be how to support those. So the idea is, if there's an evaluation involved of some type, that's what the reader should identify. That's what the writer is making in terms of a claim type. For policy or proposal, who should do what and where. Now, this is in the middle of the handout, and that's perfectly fine. Bear in mind, a lot of times the debate really hinges on this. Who should do what and where? Not that all debates they're going to read or write will focus on that claim type. But the idea is when we get moving towards things like solutions, this is what we're looking for. And yes, the key word in it is often should. You'll often see that in a policy claim. Who should do what and where? Also, this one I got to give a heads up, can be really difficult to identify for students, particularly our students who are newer to the rhetorical methods. So deal is meaningful definitions. How are we defining, categorizing the concept, group, person? So the idea of paying athletes, what is marriage? What are these people? So in other words, the acts that are being done, right? These are the claims of fact, right? Then the key is, well, what does that mean for the athletes? What does that mean for marriage? What does that mean for the idea of a patriot? And that's where claim of definition comes in. And this label, this category. One thing to note as a reader, writer, or someone coming in there in the writing center trying to put together an argument or identify positions in it, like they're doing an exploratory paper or rhetorical analysis, it is often this claim type that there is a big divergence in where the positions stand. As you notice, well, how you view that athlete, the marriage, the patriot, they're not going to agree on a whole lot after that fact by and large. Well, claim of cause sounds simple, right? What's behind it? Notice it doesn't come first. Deal is, think of it like this, and the students, I tell my students this. The key is, note that there's a problem. How do we define the problem? Then what's behind it, right? Think when a repair person comes to your place. They don't start looking for the cause right away, right? They look for, well, what's the problem and what is it? And what's behind it, right? Same thing with an argument. The deal is, what is happening? How do we categorize it? What's behind it? And what are the results that are happening now or that could happen very soon? Clearly a very important claim type. And often very crucial to what a student will read, write, bring into the center to try to get some help on. And, there's rarely an argument that only uses one or even just two. Some arguments won't use all five. But the key is they're usually using multiple claim types to build a complete argument. And as it says in this particular handout, dominant claim is in thesis, right? In other words, what's either the reader, what's the written argument's dominant claim? What's the thesis? What are all the other claims driving towards proving? As a writer, same role for the dominant claim. What am I driving at as a writer? What am I trying to say overall? The other claim types, notice fact, claim, definition, cause, go right behind it, right? So my thesis, and then I got to explain what are the facts. So what are we defining then as a result in terms of it? So clearly social media, right? In this case, of the example, and then cause, what's behind it? What are the effects? Then let's evaluate it. Sometimes in a complete argument, then the next move is who should do what and where, but not all English 102 instructors emphasize that. Not all things that students are going to read are going to emphasize that, but this gives you a good idea of how you notice the subclaims as they're written here. Don't just necessarily directly prove my claim of value, my dominant claim, my thesis. Okay, it's not good for young people. Claim of fact, it's not good for young people. That's not the claim of fact, right? Like it says here, what are the facts of the issue, the problem? That's the deal. Not just define, good for young people. Define then what does that mean for social media? What's behind it? What are the effects? Which doesn't mean, well, if we evaluate it this way, this will be the effects. The key is with the subclaims is they are building up in logic, rhetorically speaking, to my dominant claim. This is how I got to the dominant claim, or this is how the writer arrives at the dominant claim, is looking at the other claims and what they add up to. Now, rhetorically armed with this handout in a session, the faculty member, the student could really get a lot done, I would say, in that session period. And the student can walk away with a lot to think about and work with in future reading, writing, argument. I tell you, someone who's graded 18 million English 102 papers, when students are able to identify these things, even if it's in a rhetorical analysis or apply them in their own writing, it really does make a real difference, in the quality of the reading, the writing, and the research when they can understand how the argument works. And so that's why this handout's together. Now, to complement that, arguments don't happen in a vacuum, right? They rhetorically rely on the ideas of others. The students aren't going to be the first people to write on this particular issue, right? The writer that they look at wasn't the first writer to write on the issue. So what am I getting at? Quotes, paraphrases, and summaries. So let's do a little short review of our other handout again. Ellen has put together for us, which works like this. Let me get to the very top of it. So again, the flow chart method to give us the specific definition of what the three are. And then really the crucial part of the handout, I think really be useful for students and for tutors to try to help explain how these three skills work. The key, or the two skills, is when to use it, when to quote. You want it exactly how they are. Why not? You put it in your own, and why not use the original words? Well, here's why. And this is true for summarizing also, which is why I mentioned the third skill. The key is, when do we use each one? This is important. Okay. You want to keep it the way it is. It matches what the reader needs. Changing it might weaken the effectiveness. Paraphrasing, the language isn't going to work. The ideas are more important. They're not going to fit in necessarily with the writer's target audience. We don't just want to drop them in. And really, this is a really tough skill. And I know tutors see this, haven't tutored many times in the center, see a lot of struggles with this skills. Okay, so that's a paraphrase. That's a quote. That's a summary. How do I get them in there? Aha. The handout gives you some nice examples of these. Notice also tense, verb tense. Here's the thing. Yes, this is true, as is mentioned, something that is done and over, and you're given a specific year or point of time. Overall, as we know, MLA tends to use the present tense for everything else, since these are your basic forms of verbs, right? If someone comes in, and sometimes the instructor does do APA, and they'll use APA in other classes. It's not all MLA through college, as you all certainly know. But these are some really nice verbs, particularly the suggest, claim, conclude, note, suggest, acknowledge. Give them something other than, yes, says and writes work too, but key is variety with these signal verbs, depending on the tone of the writer, vis-a-vis the tone of the idea within the context of a piece of writing. Even has some nice, I don't want to say formulas, because that makes it sound like the writing's formulaic, but the key is the writer will have some options here. Very nice. Multiple ways to do this. Examples in quote form and paraphrase form. The different structures are the according to. When you have that complete sentence, that's what I go over with my students again and again. It can't just be according to, Freeman, and that's all there is. The key is put it together, make it all a complete sentence, and we're in good shape. The idea is there. See the verb complete sentence there? Lyman insists, not good. Complete sentence, common name, see that? There you go. Put it at the end. That works too. Use some variety. Not every time just the same or no. It's not plugging in values, right? With quotes. Oh, thank you for putting this in here. Comments inside the quote, no matter how many times they seem to see it in what they read. Students don't do it. And it's not just because they got the British English thing working. American apple pie writers do it too. I don't know why, but I'm glad this is on here. All right, inside, commas and periods inside. Very true. Summarize longer rather than shorter. Put it away. That's right. In fact, I'd say put it away when you do your one sentence summary or paraphrase, then come back. It keeps you from keeping the language too similar. A little bit on MLA and APAs here, and yeah, this is your big difference. MLA would give a name if it's not in the signal phrase, not in the writing, and a page number. APA would give a name, comma, year for the in-text citation. Big difference. One thing in MLA that I noticed is an MLA-based instructor for citation. Boy, that comma is hard to get rid of. They want to put Smith, comma 25, so you may see quite a bit of that, probably already have. Also on the handout for the tutor and the student, nice link there to a good site that helps explaining APA versus MLA. This is really useful, I would say, because it's right there. I'm going to show it now and make this video even longer. But the idea is, seeing the differences, because they tend to be more familiar with APA and what they're doing, so to show them what the differences are when they have that MLA instructor. And by the way, you know this, they still have an arts or humanities requirement to do for Gen Ed, right? In addition to English 102, they got electives. MLA will be coming back. But regardless if it's MLA or APA, the quote and paraphrasing handout should be a big, concise, skills building, tutor helping and aiding handout for us, as is, of course, the claims in terms of the rhetoric. That's really the rhetorical basis of the class. All right, they can work with the ideas of others, make their own ideas using rhetoric, using the skills of paraphrase, quoting, summarizing. That's really, there's only so much can be done in a 1 hour tutoring session or even in feedback or an office hour from a professor. But working together, I know the WRLC and the instructors can only make things better for our students. Thanks again to Ellen and for Shailene for being the coordinator with me to put all this together. And I hope you all have some happy tutoring sessions. Thank you very much.